You're a startup founder that wants to know exactly what it might be like to work with LeapSheep? If so, this video is for you. My name's Kirk Drage. I'm the CEO and co-founder of LeapSheep. At LeapSheep, we support founders to get to product market fit with less capital and less risk and help them avoid the startup graveyard. Let me show you exactly how we do this. I'm going to start off by talking about the process of building a startup and the first things that we take founders through. So initially, we look at, do founders really understand what product market fit is, the definition of it in a very disciplined way, and why it's so important to get to product market fit. Because if you don't understand what that is, then you're very likely to take a trip to the startup graveyard. Next, we look at what process do founders have for getting to product market fit with the least amount of capital, so they can be very capital efficient with the resources they have, and with the least amount of risk. Doing things that are very specific and applicable to their particular team, their startup, their business model, and avoiding approaches that we know don't work. And this is one of the reasons why so many startups fail, is because they follow approaches and practices which are just not a fit for their situation, and they end up spending a lot more resources than they need. And we call that the disruptive innovation journey, and I'm going to go through that in a bit more detail in just a minute. If you don't have this process, you're essentially making it up as you go along to figure out how to get to product market fit. Again, you've got a very high chance of visiting the startup graveyard. The next thing is to have a clear business model hypothesis and potentially a go-to-market strategy for how to approach a large global market opportunity. So a business model hypothesis is all about, do you know exactly who your target market is? Do you know exactly what problems you're solving for them? Do you know exactly what value proposition you intend to create? And do you have an idea of the revenue model that goes along with that business? Once you've got that hypothesis, then it's all about validating, can that business model get to product market fit? And the first step on that process is having that very, very clear business model hypothesis. If you don't have a clear business model hypothesis, then again, you're very likely to take a trip to the startup graveyard. The next thing is looking at what resources you have in order to validate this business model hypothesis that you have. And it's really important that you can make it to one of three critical milestones with whatever resources that you have. The first one is, can you get to an exit event? Now, this is obviously not going to be applicable to a very early stage startup. The second milestone is, can you reach cash flow break even? Can you become self-sufficient with the resources that you have? And the third is, can you become competitive enough to raise capital? Now, if you can't reach any of these three milestones, you're likely to spend whatever resources you have and again, take a trip to the startup graveyard. If you know before you set out on this journey that you don't have enough resources to be able to get to one of these milestones, then you've got a choice. You either need to go back and come up with a new business model hypothesis that is potentially easier for you to build, that you do have the resources to get one of these milestones. Or alternatively, you can look to acquire external resources that are external to the business. For example, if you're not competitive enough to raise capital, you can't get capital for the business, but you could get a side hustle. You could go and take a couple of days of consulting work, or create another income stream to be able to continue to work on your startup. And sometimes that is enough. Once you have a clear go-to-market hypothesis and a clear business model hypothesis, then and you have the resources required to move forward, then you can really get into the business of building your startup. And in the early stages, this is all about validating that you've got a business model worth scaling, and that this business model hypothesis that you've got can actually get to product market fit. And this is really where this process that we call the disruptive innovation journey comes into play. And I'm going to go through that in detail in just a moment. If you are partway down this process of getting to product market fit and validating the business model, but you don't yet quite make it, and you come across a fatal flaw, something that is a fundamental part of your hypothesis. For example, you figure out you can't get the technology to do what you thought, or you find out that the market just doesn't have the pain and the problem that you thought that it did, then you may have to go back and come up with a new business model hypothesis. Now, it could be that your long-term vision is still valid. It just means that maybe the market segment you've chosen and the particular way that you've decided to create a value proposition within that vision is not valid. So this gives you an opportunity to go back and have a second and third and fourth attempt. Quite often this is called a pivot. Another step on this journey is if you get to a point where you've got 6 months or less runway, then you need to sort of reevaluate these resources and think about, do I have enough resources to get to one of these 3 milestones? And maybe originally when you set out, you thought you did, but things end up taking more time and cost more money than you thought. If you get to that 6 months worth of cash flow left, then it's appropriate to go back and consider, do I have the right business model hypothesis? Do I need to get a side hustle potentially? And really reconsider your options to make sure that you don't get to the point where you just run out of cash and you've got no option but to shut down the business. Now, if you manage to go through this process and get all the way to validating product market fit, then you get to scale up the business. It's scale up time. And this is obviously the goal that all startup founders are looking for, is to get to product market fit and scale up. Now, even if you get to product market fit and scale up, the important thing to know is that you're not done. You have only got to product market fit in one market segment with one product. So you're going to have to go back and come up with your next business model hypothesis for your next segment. And this is really your go-to-market strategy coming into play here, is moving on to the next segment and the next segment and the next segment. So at a very high level, that's the process that we use to support founders. It's a very disciplined process, as you can see. But really the magic happens in the next stage. So let's go down and really talk about that. So if we drill down on the what we call the search phase, where you're searching for product market fit, and this is where we use the disruptive innovation journey that I'm about to show you in a minute. But what's really important to understand is that startups have to search for a business model that's worth scaling, i.e. search for business model for product market fit, and then scale up. And the phases that business life cycles go through, if you're a startup building a novel type of business or a novel type of product that doesn't exist or exists in very limited volume, that there's just not enough validated evidence to build a traditional style business plan and go execute with confidence against that business plan, then you need to go through this search phase. And once you've completed the search phase, you can go on to the growth phase, scale up the business, and then eventually the maturity phase, at which case you'll need to either transform the business or potentially go into decline, Kodak or Blockbuster style. And so the important thing that during this search phase, which is where all startups begin, is you need to figure out what is this scalable business model hypothesis that you can choose. And these squiggly lines at the front here represent the search for what is the market, what is the right first market to enter, what is the right beachhead to enter. And that phase is a little bit messy. You don't have enough information to make good quality decisions, so you need to do both market research and user research and get out there and figure out what is that market. And once you've found what that market opportunity is and you can create a product and you can start getting customers and earning revenue, it's really important not to end up in this position that is shown here with this grey line, to create a business model that has sufficient revenue and profit to be a successful business, but it's not venture backable because it's not delivering enough return to make the risk worth it for an innovation-driven business, which is what a startup is. So from the very get-go, it's really important that you understand this milestone of product market fit. And if you can achieve product market fit, and during the search phase, what we want to do is grow for learning, not grow for growth, which means we want to acquire customers, paying customers, and instead of just going and acquiring more paying customers and trying to grow the business, we want to really look at those existing paying customers and figure out, are they advocates and fans? Are they going to tell everybody they know that if you've also got this problem, you absolutely have to use this product to solve the problem? This is a little bit like Uber, it's a little bit like Netflix, where you probably heard about it from friends, family, or colleagues. And if you don't pursue product market fit once you've got customers and revenue, and you don't continue learning and iterating on the business to get to product market fit, then you end up on this grey line. It's just a bad business to scale, and so many startups do this. But if you do get to product market fit, then you get to go on this black line, which provides you with fabulous hockey stick kind of growth, the classic startup hockey stick growth, and that is why product market fit is so important. So the question really then is, how do we get to product market fit? And that's where the disruptive innovation journey comes in. And these 4 stages of the search phase represent the first 4 stages, or the 4 stages of getting to product market fit, getting through that search phase. And that's what the disruptive innovation journey is all about. So let's jump into that. So the first phase within the 4 stages is pre-revenue market validation. And remember, this is all about risk mitigation and resource effectiveness and efficiency. And so what this stage is about, it's about using your very limited resources, which typically you have at this point in time, to validate as many risks as you possibly can without going to the cost and expense of building an actual product for actual customers and having to deliver a service. The next phase is initial pilot validation. And in this phase, where we want to do things manually, do things that don't scale, because the risk when building a startup is higher that you build the wrong thing rather than you build something that is not quite at the quality standards. Once you know what quality means, because you know what customers want, then you can focus on scale. Before you really understand what the customer wants, you need to do things manually that don't scale until you figure that out. So the first step, the pre-revenue market validation, is where we're going to do things like market research, user research, and show users mock-ups and concepts of our product to get some feedback, to figure out if they're the kinds of problems that they want solved and the kind of solutions that the customers want. Now, the problem is that is not a bulletproof way to validate the business. It is a great use of capital and is the very best thing that you can do with your capital to start off with. But still, users don't always behave the way that they tell you that they behave. And that's what this initial pilot validation stage is all about, is really looking at actual behavior of paying users, but still assuming that you're not going to scale the company because you may have the product or the market wrong. If you can get through that initial pilot validation stage and you figure out that you are in the right market and you do have the right product, well, now it's all about that investment in scale. And this is what we call product market fit validation. This is where you can do all the things that you need to do to scale, to have the security, the reliability, the fit and finish, the ease of use. All of those kind of things are part of this phase. And once you get to that product market fit validation, and you've got to product market fit, then you can scale up the business. So these are the 4 discipline phases that make sure that you use your time and capital really effective, which means you outcompete other startups. For the same amount of time and money, you'll be able to make more progress, either to get to cash flow break even, or you'll be able to make more progress to become competitive for investors to want to invest in your company. So let's drill down and look at a little bit more detail in each of these stages. So the first thing before we embark on this journey towards product market fit is make sure that you've got the right systems and processes in place to support your journey to product market fit. So for example, if you're a solo founder, those needs are going to be different than if you're a team of 4 founders and maybe you're spread out across the world. If you're a team of founders spread out across the world, you're probably going to need tools for remote collaboration. You maybe need, for example, Zoom licensing to do conference calls. You may need messaging software, et cetera, et cetera. And the trick is here that you want to invest in exactly what you need to get the job done, no more, no less. It's really easy to overinvest in this company backbone or company building stages, particularly if you come from a corporate background and you understand what good quality and scalable systems are capable of doing and why they're important. But when you're part of a startup, it's important to use your capital as frugally as possible and not overinvest in these things, but at the same time, not underinvest. So we always look at that first. Do we have the right kind of infrastructure to go ahead and pursue the business model that you want to validate? Once we figure that out, the next thing we need to do is really deeply analyze the market segment that we've chosen. And this is desk-based research. So this is things like looking at the trends in the industry sector you're going in, to looking at the technology trends for the value proposition you're looking at delivering, seeing whether the timing is right around those things, looking at the competition, making sure that you're not going into a red ocean, looking at the business model hypothesis and the unit economics, and really making sure that this is a business, on paper at least, that looks like it's really worth building and you can get to product market fit. Once you get past this stage, then the next stage is stage B. We call that problem market fit. This is all about user research. This is about spending time with users and truly listening to what they've got to say in terms of their priorities and their problems. At this stage, you don't want to talk about your solution. You don't want to give them any kind of bias to steer them in a particular direction. You need to allow them to talk about their problems. And this requires a degree of marketing to be able to get access to those people and get them to give you their time and have conversations with them. But those user research conversations, if you use the 6-part framework that we will teach you, will ensure that you really deeply understand what an ideal customer is, what their problem is that they're willing to pay, both in time and attention, to have solved. And that then enables you to figure out what is the exact solution that you might need to build. The next stage, stage C, concept market fit. This is where you use mock-ups, or what we like to call solution concepts, MVPs. These are prototypes of your product. They are demonstrating what is possible and the kind of experience that you intend on building, but not actually creating that experience. This is a really important step to do with potential clients. You want to clearly show that this is a prototype or a mock-up, because you want to invite feedback. You don't want to show them a finished product, because no one wants to call your baby ugly. So it's really important that the people that you're interacting with, which should come from your user research phase, and so they're going on a journey with you, and you're saying to them, look, I've listened to the problems that you explained that you've got. Here's how I'm thinking we could go about solving them. Is this something that you could imagine you and your team potentially using? And invite their feedback. And through a series of iterations, you should be able to get to the point, if they care enough about the problem and they've iterated on the solution, that they say, if that was a real product, I'd absolutely buy it. And at that point, you can essentially create a wait list or create pre-sales. And if you're unable to do that, then you know that you're probably not in a good enough market with a good enough problem, or you don't have a good enough solution. But if you can do that, then you can build your minimum viable product, or at least the first version of your minimum viable product, and go ahead and get your first paid pilot customers. And the sales and marketing required to do that, you've kind of already done through this first stage, because you've been working with customers now for some time through this first period. And you should have a wait list of users that want to pay for your solution. And here it's all about iteration. It's all about doing a series of soft launches in waves. So creating a version, launching to just a few customers, getting some feedback from those customers, incorporating that feedback into the next version, and launching in another wave in essentially a series of private betas, until you get to the point where you've got confidence that you can reliably create fans and advocates out of these customers. Because you will not get to product market fit if you can't create fans and advocates. And there's no point scaling and trying to sell at scale and chasing revenue and profit targets until you can reliably create fans and advocates. And stage D2 is all about validating the value. So D1 is all about technically, can you deliver on your promise of creating the value that you said you could create? The next is really understanding that value. And what is so often the case is the value that the customers thought they were going to get when they go through stage B and C, where it's all just conceptual and it's not real world, is not what happens in reality. Sometimes the value is much less, and sometimes the value is in fact much more. And it's only at this point that you can really understand how to build a pricing model. And so it's really important to conduct this step. And once you've done stages D1 and D2 to the satisfaction of your clients, and you know that you can repeatedly create fans and advocates, and you're doing that in a way that's manual and not scalable, then all you need to do is scale that, which is now the third phase, the product market fit validation. So D3 is where you want to ensure that you can keep users engaged and you don't run into that, what I like to call the gym membership problem, where you get through D1 and D2, you show that you can deliver the value and it's a good economic value proposition, but people get distracted and they just don't stay engaged. And so you end up with essentially poor customer retention and poor lifetime value because users drift. So it's really important to make sure that you solve that problem. Then you can focus on scalable marketing. Don't forget, you've been doing marketing since essentially stage A and B, where you've been talking to potential customers. But up until you get to stage D3 and D4, you haven't needed customers at scale. So low scale marketing has been all that you've needed to this point. But if you've been doing some good content marketing and good audience building, you should be set up really, really well for D4, which is where you now really want to start to turn the taps in terms of your marketing and sales and prove that your customer acquisition engine can operate at volume. Once you've done that, then you can validate your entire business model. And if you can do that and prove that you're able to create advocates and fans and retain customers that love your product and tell all their friends, and that viral feedback loop becomes your number one customer acquisition engine, and you can retain those customers, then you've got a hit on your hands, you've got the product market fit, and now it's all about scaling up. And at each and every stage, you need to go back and continually revalidate what you've done at previous stages, because you're going to be learning things at every new stage. So your definition of the market right at stage A is going to change, so you need to go back and look at that. User research, you're going to learn new things, and you may need to go back and continually do user research in your journey. You're going to add new features and functions. You're going to continually want to do stage C, concept market fit, as you add in those new features and functions. And of course, the company backbone. As you start adding team, as you start adding customers, as the business starts to get more sophisticated, you're going to consistently have to improve the infrastructure that underpins the company to go on this journey. So this is the disruptive innovation journey and the process that we take founders through to get from I've got an idea all the way through to product market fit. And the last thing is, what do we do on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis with founders? Well, very simply, we are a done with you service. So we spend time with you every month, one-on-one with you and your business. And that can be your founders, your co-founders, or your team. And we talk specifically about what are the things that you need to get done to move forward on this journey. Are you back on the first page where we're still trying to really understand what product market fit is, and we're still trying to figure out what the business model hypothesis is? Or do you have a really, really clear business model hypothesis and it's really all about moving through the disruptive innovation journey? And once we've diagnosed exactly where you need to spend your resources, we then provide you with the training, the education, the templates and the guidance and the examples for how to do every one of these steps. So that means that between the mentoring sessions that we offer, you can be watching online training, you can be using that training to use the templates to get things like user research done, to get things like solution concept validation done, to get things like your initial pilots in place, look at your marketing, look at how you develop your product, look at how you build your team, look at how you raise capital. All of those things, we help you figure out what should you be spending your time on this week. And then we provide you with the exact guidance that you need to get those things done. And in between those one-on-one sessions that we have about every fortnight, we then have Q&A sessions. And those Q&A sessions you're free to book on, and the training that you're using to do whatever particular task that you need to do for your startup, you can come and ask questions and say, I didn't quite understand this. Can you help me with this? Or I've done what was suggested in the training. Like, here's an example of a user research interview that I've got, but I've got these questions because I'm not sure how to interpret the data. Those Q&A sessions are there to really help provide you with the guidance and feedback to keep you moving. And so essentially, month after month, we hold your hand through this journey and make sure and hold you accountable to spending your resources to manage risk and resource efficiently as possible, so that you can have the least risk and the most chance of getting to product market fit and scaling up your company. So I hope that gives you a bit of a window into the kind of experience that founders have with LeapSheep. It's a very opinionated service on how to build startups. All of the advice and guidance that we give is based on global best practice from sources that you would know and recognize, and people that you would know and recognize, like Steve Blank or Paul Graham, or those kind of individuals. What we've done that's unique and special is we've curated all that information and created a body of knowledge. We've trained and certified startup building advisors on that body of knowledge, and that body of knowledge includes diagnostics to figure out exactly what you need as a startup, because every startup is individual. And once we understand exactly what you need to do to spend your resources as wisely as possible and manage your risk as wisely as possible, we can prescribe exactly the support that you need to undertake those steps. And then we just repeat that process over and over and over again until you reach product market fit.